Welcome back to another episode of Daily Neville. I am your host, Josiah Brandt, and Daily Neville is all about breaking down the teachings of Neville Goddard, making them easy to understand, easy to digest, easy to apply in 20 minutes or less. I designed Daily Neville to be your daily dose of high-vibe consciousness nutrition, going back to the words of Neville, back to these key consciousness ideas each and every day. So if you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe to this channel so that you get notifications when the next episode comes tomorrow. Season 4 is all about Neville's 1942 book, Freedom for All, a practical application of the Bible. And this, episode 2, continues upon episode 1, which was an introduction to the book and a beginning of the first chapter. And in this episode 2, we're going to go ahead and finish chapter 1, which is titled The Oneness of God. Picking up where we left off last time with Neville's words, Neville's describing this unconditioned consciousness that is within each of us. It is the unconditioned consciousness that exists before we layer on any layers of identity. The unconditioned consciousness is a simple state of knowing that we are without paying any attention or without telling any stories about who we are or why we are. And to use Neville's words here, he says, I am the unconditioned reality, conditioned as that which I believe myself to be. I am the believer limited by my beliefs, the knower defined by the known. The world is my conditioned consciousness objectified. That which I feel and believe to be true of myself is now projected in space as my world. The world, my mirrored self, ever bears witness of the state of consciousness in which I live. So this is the idea of us being our root source consciousness being unconditioned. And everything that we are observing, everything that we are experiencing, all of the stories that we tell about it are attempts at self-definition. But in truth, we cannot really truly be defined. We can experience ourselves in increments as certain definitions, but in truth, no one definition defines the totality that we are. And so as we start to break down these ideas and to understand them further, we understand that this idea creates freedom for each of us, for all of us. It creates freedom because beliefs are not fixed. Beliefs can change over time. What we know to be true is not fixed. What we know to be true changes over time. There's an evolutionary energy. There's an evolutionary pressure that is leading us to always shift and change and grow beyond the limits of our former beliefs and knowings and concepts of ourself. And this energy itself, this evolutionary energy of source itself, is always driving us further at further attempts at self-definition. So we actually have the freedom and the choice and the possibility to define ourselves as being that which we desire to be, as opposed to thinking that we are somehow artificially limited by feeling limitations of the past. Continuing with Neville's words, he says, "The world, my mirrored self, ever bears witness of the state of consciousness in which I live." And that really is the key here. Whatever you are experiencing in your world, it is a mirror of your attempt at self-definition, because in truth, you are unconditioned consciousness. But in an attempt at self-definition, you have created the world in which you're experiencing right now, but you're not limited to that. You can change your state of consciousness, and thus you can change the experience of the world that you're having right now. Neville says, there is no chance or accident responsible for the things that happen to me, or the environment in which I find myself. Nor is predestined fate the author of my fortunes or misfortunes. Innocence and guilt are mere words, with no meaning to the law of consciousness, except as they reflect the state of consciousness itself. Now, what I love about this is this truly sets us free. There is no predestined fate. The future is not pre-written. There's not some script that we're all following, not on some grand scale. All of us are out picturing the script that is written by our state of consciousness, but it's not written for us by another. It is our own being, our own sense of awareness attempting to define itself that is writing that script. Innocence and guilt are mere words, he says. The law of consciousness knows nothing of these words. The law of consciousness simply says we're going to outpicture our state. And whether that is an innocent state or a guilty state has nothing to do. That those are just attempts at definition, further definition. But at the level of the law of consciousness, there is no such thing as innocence or guilt, except as it describes the state of consciousness itself. Okay, continuing now with the conclusion of this chapter, The Oneness of God in Freedom for All by Neville Goddard. The consciousness of guilt, Neville writes, calls forth condemnation. The consciousness of lack produces poverty. Man everlastingly objectifies the state of consciousness in which he abides, but he has somehow or other become confused in the interpretation of the law of cause and effect. Right off the bat here, there is so much layered in these sentences. Man everlastingly, this is a law, and it's always true, and it's eternally true, everlastingly, objectifies, meaning pushes out in a way that now can be interacted with in the 3D material plane, the state of consciousness, meaning the place in which you live in your mind. That's your identity, that's your beliefs, that's everything you consent to being true about yourself, about others, about the world around you. That's your state of consciousness. You are always going to push out into a world that you can experience the state of consciousness in which you're living. Because again, your world is an attempt at self-definition. Your state of consciousness is an attempt at self-definition. So you attempt to define yourself as a certain type of person, as a certain state of consciousness, and then you walk through the world and you're experiencing that state of consciousness pushed out into material form. The state of consciousness in which he abides, meaning you don't just touch it once, you don't just flirt with it, you abide in it. You live and dwell in a state of consciousness. And that's the state of consciousness in which you are living in. That's the state of consciousness that you're going to see outpictured into the world around you. The one that you are living in, the one that you are abiding in. So any change of consciousness to be outpictured into the world, you need to move into it and you have to dwell therein. Neville says, man has become confused in the interpretation of the law of cause and effect. We have been conditioned as humans, by civilization, by society, to look for physical causes. But the metaphysical truth is that there are no true physical causes. All causes start in consciousness. Yes, I can say, oh, there was a rainstorm and it caused a flood, and that's a physical cause and a physical effect. But before there could ever be a rainstorm, there had to be consciousness of something called rain. So all causes start in consciousness. Neville continues, man has forgotten that it is the inner state which is the cause of the outer manifestation. As within, so without. And in his forgetfulness, he believes that an outside God has his own peculiar reason for doing things, such reasons being beyond the comprehension of mere man. Or he believes that people are suffering because of past mistakes which have been forgotten by the conscious mind. Or, again, that blind chance alone is God, meaning that the world itself is chaotic or the universe is chaos, and there is no rhyme or reason. Chaos itself plays the part of God. So these are the three things that people typically give their power away to. It's either an outside external God that has his own reasoning that we cannot comprehend because it doesn't make sense to mere man, or it is some sort of karma. People are suffering because they made a mistake a long time ago and now it's coming back to haunt them, which is just a very vast misunderstanding of the way the world works. Or again, that we're just living in a chaotic universe, which is not the case, unless of course your consciousness is chaos and you will experience chaos. One day, Neville writes, man will realize that his own IAMNESS is the God he has been seeking throughout the ages. That his own sense of awareness, his consciousness of being, is the one and only reality. The most difficult thing for man to truly grasp is this, that the I amness in himself is God. It is his true being, or father state, the only state he can be sure of. The Son, his conception of himself, is an illusion. He always knows that he is, but that which he is an illusion created by himself, the Father, his true self, in an attempt at self-definition. So this human being that you are, this state of consciousness that you're in, this character that you're playing is an illusion. It's an attempt at self-definition by your higher dimensional self, which is the Father state of consciousness. Your local human self is an attempt at by your father state of consciousness to define itself. So the father state of consciousness says, let us make man in our own image, in our likeness. So father state of consciousness, consciousness itself, takes on this human form. And then let's create a world in the image and likeness of ourselves so we can experience what we are. But what we are is unlimited, eternal, vast, and really, on some level, incomprehensible. It's infinite. So really, any attempt that we make at trying to define the vastness, the infinite that we are, is going to be, by very definition, an illusion. What you see before you right now, this human character that I am, is just one aspect of my being. It is not truly my entire being, because I am infinite and eternal and vast in a way that cannot be described or interpreted or even categorized as human. I'm so much more than this, but I am also this right now. This is a limited attempt at self-definition that I'm experiencing in this moment. And the same is true for you. Your source is so much vaster than the character that you are playing right now. As the actor behind the character that you're playing right now, your repertoire is vast and expansive. But this is one thing that you are choosing to give life to right now at an attempt at self-definition. Neville continues. This discovery reveals that all that I have believed God to be, I am. All that I have believed God to be, infinite, eternal, omnipotent, omnipresent, everlasting, all these characteristics that we have in the past previously assigned to an external God, in truth, apply to our own infinite source consciousness that is in you and is in I. This discovery reveals that all that I have believed God to be, I am. I am the resurrection and the life. This is a statement of fact concerning my consciousness. For my consciousness resurrects or makes visibly alive that which I am conscious of being. I am the door. All that ever came before me are thieves and robbers. This statement shows me that my consciousness is the one and only entrance into the world of expression. Only through my consciousness can anything come into the world of expression. And that by assuming the consciousness of being or possessing the thing which I desire to be or possess, that is the only way by which I can become it or possess it. Furthermore, any attempt to express this desirable state in ways other than by assuming the consciousness of being or possessing it is to be robbed of the joy of expression and possession. I am the beginning and the end. This statement reveals my consciousness as the cause of the birth and death of all expression. It all starts with I am. I am the beginning, I am the end. It starts in my consciousness, it ends in my consciousness, and I take supreme responsibility for that which is born in my world and that which dies in my world. I am hath sent me. This statement reveals my consciousness to be the Lord, which sends me into the world in the image and likeness of that which I am conscious of being, to live in a world composed of all that I am conscious of. I am the Lord, and there is no God beside me. This statement declares my consciousness to be the one and only Lord, and beside my consciousness there is no God. Be still and know that I am God. This statement means that I should still the mind and know that consciousness itself is God. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. I am the Lord, that is my name. Now that you have discovered your I am, your very consciousness itself, to be God, do not claim anything to be true of yourself that you would not claim to be true of God. For in defining yourself, you are defining God. For in defining yourself, You are defining God. This statement should make you think twice before you ever open your mouth and say anything which places a limit upon God that is not true of God, that is robbing God of expression. When you say anything or define yourself in any way that is not pleasing or appropriate to put a limit or a definition upon God. That which you are conscious of being is that which you have named God. God and man are one. You and your Father are one. Your unconditioned consciousness, your I am, and that which you are conscious of being are one. The conceiver and the conception are one. If your conception of yourself is less than that which you claim is true of God, you have robbed God. You have robbed the Father, because you, the Son, or the conception, which is in truth an illusion, bear witness of the Father or the conceiver. Do not take the magical name of God, I am, in vain, for you will not be held guiltless. You must express all that you claim yourself to be. This is the law of consciousness. Name God. Name nature. Name means nature. Define the nature of God by consciously defining yourself as your highest ideal. One of the things I love so much about Neville's works, he has this exhortation in him. It's a very strong call to action that reaches into your soul and lifts it upwards. It says, the energy just reaches down in and says, you can be so much more than you are imagining yourself to be right now. And it inspires you to ignite potential and to reach for ever higher and fuller, more beautiful expressions of our divine essence. And that is the gift that Neville gives us each and every day here at Daily Neville. That's all for this episode of Daily Neville. In the next, we're going to explore the name or nature of God in Chapter 2 of Freedom for All, a practical application of the Bible. Until then, imagine wisely, my friends, and I will see you in the next.